Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Now it says it's preparing to live stream the meeting. Now, I don't know whether that means it will live stream what we've already said or just from this point,
Okay.
because
So,
sometimes it seems like it's right from the beginning.
okay, so I'm going to go looking for your second channel because it never brings that up right away. So I can share that and see if you're live or yet not. Okay, it does say live. So it says live and I see the title. So it looks like it may have already started, but oops. Okay, so I muted it and I'm going to share it because we are live now.
Okay, good. I had to mute it too because I clicked on the wrong stuff, and so I'm going to try to share this on my. Yeah, I'm not going to even bother with my Twitter right now.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, I totally got it. So
yeah,
this is just thing I don't really like is sometimes Facebook lets me just tag you right away, but lately it's not. It's just weird that ever since they've done some changes. Ever since they've done.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I'm just trying to get to the point where I can share it.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Repeating stuff that we said. Create post, talking.
Well, I'm gonna do the same thing on Instagram too. So I am like listening as we talk, but the only reason I'm holding my phone is because I do want to, and just so people are watching, like one thing that I think others are doing and we might all benefit from is like sharing these things on Instagram stories to get a different audience that might not know about our live streams.
Right. And I don't think that we are currently in the mode where both of us are seen at the same time, are we?
Well, I have to go back and see because I was looking at my phone. So no, it goes back and forth. So at the very beginning, I see both of us. And now, like, okay, at the beginning, it starts like that. And then it goes back and forth, I noticed.
Yeah, well, I don't know why, because I didn't think I had changed it, but let's not worry about it too much.
I think there is something you can click on it. I remember I'd have to kind of play around with it again.
Yeah, I've forgotten what it was. That's the truth.
I'll have to look at it, but anyway, so we were going to talk about some trending news story, right? Isn't there something going on currently at the moment that?
Well, everybody's talking about this Jeffrey Epstein character, who was a good friend of both our current president and of the Clintons, and apparently he was a party boy and did some not so nice things. Now, I don't really know what he did, because I'll tell you that I haven't been following the story, honestly. I'm not into that stuff. Some people are really into salacious gossip about people, and especially things having to do with sex. And I wasn't really following all that. But okay, whatever it is, he got accused of something along the lines of kidnapping people or underage people and selling them into slavery. That's all I'm going to say. That's my understanding. But I don't really know anything about it, and I'm not saying he did or didn't do it. We're all innocent until proven guilty, and I may have just heard some weird rumors, and so I'm not trying to say anything about that. But everybody was saying, because, well, it depends on whether you're a Democrat or Republican or whatever, what they were saying. But the people who didn't like Hillary Clinton and the Clintons in general said, oh boy, they're going to suicide him. You wait. He's never going to go to trial. They're going to say that he committed suicide. And it's just one of those things, because anybody who has evidence against the Clintons ends up a suicide, but nobody believes it's a suicide. And then other people who hate Trump say, hey, come on. Trump was friends with this Epstein guy. There are pictures of them together, whatever. It's probably Trump who had him killed.
I don't know. It reminds me of that old Unsolved Mysteries episode in the early 90s where they're like, was it Epstein? It might have been another person. There's been several people connected to the Clintons that I know died under mysterious circumstances. I'm not sure if that was Epstein. Honestly, I haven't followed the stories to know 100%. No, it wasn't him.
No. It was a lot of people. It was a lot of people in the past. I mean, there was one guy, the Clintons had some financial things, Whitewater, where it was.
Yeah, it was one of those people.
So it was alleged that this one guy who jumped off a tall building didn't really jump off a tall building, but he had incriminating evidence with regard to the Clintons. Okay, that's just a rumor. I'm not saying that happened. Why, that happened. Okay, that was a rumor, but that wasn't the only rumor. So there were other rumors. Bill Clinton was in a number of sexual scandals.
Oh yeah, and we know about all. I mean, we know about all that. That's well documented, 100%.
Well, yes, but here's the thing: it's it's not just one woman; it's lots of women, and it's not just when he was president. It was also when he was governor.
It's when he was governor, like he was trafficking women. That's the thing. Like, okay, you might love the kittens, but he was arranging for state troopers to bring that one. I do remember hearing about arranging for state troopers to help bring prostitutes to the governor's office. I do remember hearing about that. And that probably.
Okay. See, as a libertarian, I'm going to stand back. Yeah. And I'm not a Clinton supporter at all. And I have no respect for the Clintons. But here's the thing. If they were voluntary prostitutes, then the only scandal there is, well, number one, he was unfaithful to his wife, but that's between him and his wife, right?
Yeah, that's between them.
Yeah. And number two, he was using state troopers, which is state money, to do this. But the fact that he might have, hired a prostitute or two or three or whatever, that in my libertarian estimation should not be a crime. It was a crime, but it should not be.
Yeah, it should not be a crime. I think what upset some people at the time, though, is that he kind of had used the state troopers, and it's something that was kind of swept under the carpet. I think that's what bothered people, from what I heard on the more conservative side of the spectrum.
Yeah. So he got in trouble with a lot of things, but at one point he was just coming on to women, who came to him when he was governor or president and asked for help with something. And he would say, yes, I'll help you if you help me with this, and I just don't want to get into that. But
let's not. Yeah, let's not.
Yeah. But it was alleged that one of the women went to her husband and talked to him about this. And later the husband was found dead. And it's not the woman who killed him. We don't know who killed him. But
we don't. But it's kind of odd that it's salacious, yes, but too many of these things always seem to happen around people in power. Let's be honest, that's kind of
also the thing that happened in Waco. It's not that it had, as far as I know, the branch divisions have nothing to do with Bill Clinton's interesting life, but what happened was that he sent some of his former bodyguards to attack the Branch Davidians when they were unaware that it was the government. So they fought back and they killed those guys. So that's a little bit like something that happened in the Bible, where somebody did something that he shouldn't have, King David, and then he sent the husband of the woman who that he got pregnant to the battlefield to die.
Wow.
So that kind of thing happens. Again, just an allegation. Apparently those were his bodyguards who got killed, but maybe, hey, they just had a different job and got killed and it had nothing to do with it. But Bill Clinton was the president at the time, and he was in, Janet Reno answered to him. Okay, so there's all of that. And then people were saying, this Jeffrey Epstein guy got arrested, convicted, whatever, accused of of these things, and he has a list of people, and he's going to testify. And he's going to testify, and he's going to bring up really important names. And I bet you he'll never live to see the trial. And sure enough, the next day, he's dead. And everybody's like, oh my God. And he was on suicide watch because there had been a previous attempt of something. I don't know if he attempted or somebody, and he didn't die of it. And so he was supposed to be on suicide watch. And how do you commit suicide when you're being watched in prison?
That's impossible. Right? I mean, don't they take everything away so you can't commit suicide?
Well, if they don't want you to commit suicide, that's what they do. So what's really funny is there was this meme, and it showed like the round table, and it showed conservatives and liberals and libertarians all agreeing on one thing. And the one thing that we all agreed on was, hey, he must have been murdered because it just doesn't make sense any other way.
Yeah, that doesn't really make any sense. Like, I haven't read anything about it, but that's just very fishy. Like, if you're on suicide watch, it should be virtually impossible for you to commit suicide unless there was some sort of prison fight or something happened.
Yeah, right. You know? Yeah, so then the next thing that happened, I think that was yesterday, but the next thing that happened was everybody's waiting to see the security footage, because when you're in prison, you don't have any privacy. There is security footage. And guess what? We don't have the security footage. It's not available.
That's weird. Like, how is that? Because I thought they always had security.
I don't know. So now there are two versions of the story. Yeah, you can say this is all conspiracy theory, but you have to admit that the circumstances are suspicious. That they're suspicious to any person, regardless of their political persuasion. It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, a Libertarian, an Independent. We all think it's suspicious.
It is suspicious, and it seems interesting that he kind of ran in both circles with the Trumps and the Clintons, and the Trumps and the Clintons used to be friends, and they didn't used to seem to be that disparate in their political beliefs at one time.
Yeah. So then after it turned out that the footage was missing, people started saying, oh, I saw this on the A-Team. He's not dead at all. So now there's a different theory that's running around, and that is, okay, they announced that he committed suicide. We haven't seen the body. We haven't seen footage of him committing suicide. We have seen nothing. He's probably blackmailing whoever's in power to let him go so that he doesn't testify against them. What do you think of that theory?
Well, there could be a possibility. I mean, okay, there's another example I can think of. Remember when they supposedly got Osama bin Laden? You remember that?
Yeah.
A lot of people were very upset because they said, well, they didn't, not that I want to see that, but they said, they never showed anything. Like, we have no proof. Like, some people to this day say, did that really happen? Because there's no proof.
Yeah.
And we just have to go off the word of the government officials who say they did it. So I remember there were a lot of people that were very adamant that that never happened, and that they may have just said that happened because they wanted to make it seem like, oh, like they had some sort of victory. I do remember that was a controversy as well, because I mean, I'm not saying that they didn't execute him. I think they probably did, but it is kind of interesting that in all these other cases, you see something, but nothing was ever shown regarding that.
Right. I mean, I don't think, there ought to be documents that show it, because even when there's an inquest about somebody who died and the circumstances are not clear, there will be pictures of the body. So it's actually available for the public, and you can go and get it at your local authorities. So for there not to be any documents at all of that, even official ones, is strange. And so I think somebody said that they just dumped the body off an aircraft carrier
into the ocean.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's really suspicious.
Yeah,
Um,
the whole
and,
thing.
and so
I don't know
some
what to say about it, but it's just
Yeah, so somebody was making a joke about that too. Today they were saying, "Well, I won't believe it until they show us the footage of them dumping Epstein's body into off an aircraft carrier. Then I'll believe it." So, uh, or they were making jokes about that connected the two things.
mhm.
So I don't know. It just is. This is the United States. If
Yeah.
somebody is accused of something, don't you think he ought to be able to stay alive long enough to stand trial?
Well, that's the way it's supposed to work. Um, yeah, it's supposed to work that way, but
I
it's
mean,
a
doesn't it seem like we're a banana republic?
well, it just seems like now we're getting farther away from the way I see it is we're just getting farther away from what the founding fathers intended for a limited form of governance. And now it just seems like we are becoming, and that's not even the issue. It just seems like are these things there's just too many things. Like I don't follow a lot of these stories, but this doesn't add up. What I'm going to say is this just doesn't add up. Like why are they saying he was committing suicide, but we don't have any evidence? I think they're going to have to show some evidence that he committed suicide if people are going to believe that. That's what I'm going to say about the whole thing. If he really,
Well, the thing is, if we do have evidence, and we're going to have to ask the guard, why in the world didn't you stop that? And there's supposed to be a guard that is monitoring the
that's
security, but
another part that doesn't make any sense is if you're on suicide watch, it should be virtually impossible to commit suicide unless
somebody helped you, right?
it's
So
weird.
yeah, so here's what people are anticipating is going to happen next. Once they identify who the guard was who was supposed to be watching the suicide watch, we're going to find out in 24 hours that that guard has committed suicide too.
Oh, well, it's kind of
I mean,
all I can
seriously,
see.
right?
Yeah, this is just, it's a very odd development. I just don't see how I guess what I'm going to say is if he really did commit suicide, they're going to have to somehow substantiate that he actually did that. I'm not saying it's right that I don't want to weigh in completely since I haven't been following. I just
No,
think
I don't know. I don't know anything about him.
yeah,
Honestly, I never heard of him until they started accusing him of that. Before that, I didn't know who he was. It's not like
yeah.
I've been
Oh
into
no, I don't think you are, but it seems like a lot of people right now they're going to weigh in and they're going to make a decision about is he good, is he bad? Well, he's probably not perfect because it sounds like he has a unsavory past, but I have to say it's interesting that a lot of people in power were connected with him, you
right.
know, but the
Yeah.
libertarians weren't. That's what I would say. How come all these third party people, they don't seem to have these issues? They aren't connected with all these.
Well, I also saw a Gary Johnson joke. I don't know if it was somebody saying, "Well, at least I know Gary Johnson didn't do it," and so somebody else said, "Yeah, if you can't find Aleppo, he's probably not going to be able to find where the guard for the suicide watch is."
You know, the funny thing is, the very humorous thing about the whole thing with Gary Johnson is he may have had some advisors, but he didn't have like this well crafted group of advisors who could prompt him on everything to say and do. So yeah, he made a few gaffes, but at least we know that's him, and everybody else, they're having people tell him what to do, what to say, because they're a major political party and they have major political backing. So I think this might, if anything, what I'm going to say about these events is maybe this is a good reason why you should consider a third party candidate because they're not connected to all these.
Yeah, but I do have a libertarian position on this also. I really think that it's fine. Gary Johnson got more votes. He should be the libertarian nominee. But I think the person with the second highest number of votes should have been the vice presidential libertarian nominee, and that would have been Austin Peterson. And Austin would have helped Gary with those little things that Gary wasn't so good at.
Well, my question is for 2020, is Austin Peterson considering to run for president? Is that something that he
I
is?
don't believe so. I do not believe so. I think Kim Ruff is the front runner for the Libertarian nomination.
I don't know anything about them, but that's interesting. Okay. Is there anybody, see, because this is kind of like, I don't want to deviate, but I'm just wondering, is there anybody that's good out there right now that would be somebody that we could keep an eye out for, or not yet, would you say?
I don't know. I know that a lot of people support Kim Ruff. I personally don't know her and don't know much about her. So I can't say yes or no.
Okay. But anyway, I'll get back to.
Oh, by the way, Julia, is there any chance that you want to go to the National Libertarian Convention in 2020? It's going to be in Austin, Texas.
What dates is it?
I don't remember, but I'll let you know later.
And maybe I do this time, because I might be able to finagle it this time, because I think maybe, yeah. I think I do want to try this time, and yeah, that would be interesting to go.
Yeah, and you could report for us about what happens.
Yeah, that would be interesting. So I think, yeah, this time I would like to experience that.
Yeah, I think you should go. I really do. You just need to talk to your local libertarians so that you can have a seat there.
Okay, I need to start researching that. I wish
if you want to be a delegate, I want you to be a delegate.
Okay, that would be exciting. I think I will look into doing that. By the way, I tried to share this to Instagram stories, and I'm going to have to practice more because my phone decided to do this weird thing where it just went in a circle. So later I will practice so I know how to do it next time.
Okay. Now, do we have any viewers or any comments right now?
Let me check and see, because I would be curious to see if there's anybody live. Okay. I don't see anybody that has commented on this thus far, but it might just because it's the time of day, perhaps. I don't know. It's a Sunday, so maybe people are out right now.
Yeah, well, it could be. I just thought we would check and we would let people have a chance. Oh, yeah. So you had some things to say about Venezuela?
Yeah, okay. So it's not always like specifically regarding Venezuela, but it's just the whole idea of sanctions that I've kind of had a problem with for a long time. But this just came up again because I was just looking at a news article briefly about how sanctions are beginning to hurt the elderly, people in hospitals, because the Venezuela is being like sanctions of medicine, things that are vital for, human life. And it just seems like to me, if it's causing people, including people who are ill in hospitals and single mothers, to become refugees in a neighboring country, it just seems like sanctions aren't really hurting that person that they think shouldn't be in power. It's just hurting regular people that live in that country. And you could also say this about Iran. You could say this about Iraq. It's not hurting the person in power. It usually isn't going to change who's in power. It's just like you're meddling with the economy, it seems like to me, and you're just hurting people that you claim in general to care about. Like, we claim to be a compassionate society that wouldn't want the elderly to suffer, who wouldn't want mothers and children to suffer, but that's exactly who seems to be suffering. Also, just another thing that seems that I know, I mean, I'm not an expert on Venezuela, but I know they were doing relatively okay up until these sanctions were imposed upon them. And it just doesn't seem right that now we're creating another refugee crisis where, of course, if economic conditions become unbearable in one country, people are going to go to another country, and now they're going to Colombia. And it just seems wrong to me that we are like, oh, we don't like the leader in this country, so we're going to put economic sanctions on them. It rarely, if ever, hurts the people in power. It just hurts the regular people living in that country.
Okay, yeah. If it's a question of keeping free trade from going through, then I totally agree with you. I actually haven't kept up with the sanctions, so I don't know what the sanctions are. Now, there are other things that the United States does. It sends economic aid packages to countries around the world. They even give aid for self-defense to certain countries. Mm-hmm. I don't think we should be doing that. And I don't think, and so sometimes it goes under the guise of humanitarian aid. I don't think we should be doing that, whether we like a country or don't like it,
No,
we should not.
no, I don't think we should be doing that because supposedly we don't even have the funds to take care of our own people, which is why there were so many budget cuts in the government. Not, and I know that's a libertarian position is like you want a limited government, but they keep telling us, oh, we don't have funds to keep the national park running. We don't have funds for this. So they will have a government closure. But then magically, when we want to go to war or this country needs economic aid, we magically have this X number of dollars, even though we have a very large national debt to send this money magically. And we don't really have those funds. We are in debt. So I don't think we should economically reward other countries. We should focus on our own people. I think every country should, unless we're being invaded, then yes, we do need to go to war. But I don't believe in sending funds to a country just for economic aid or because you like that particular leader. I'm not agreeing with that. But what I'm saying is, in this case, in Venezuela, they have a slightly socialist country. That's their business, in my opinion. I might not agree with their form of government, but here's the thing. They decide, oh, they don't like who's in power, so we're going to punish them. And they've been completely independent of the U.S. They don't really have diplomatic relations with us. So now they think they're punishing them by putting these sanctions on medicine, food, and other items coming into the country. But that's not really going to hurt the person in power. It's just going to, you're meddling with the government. And I just find that's not right because it's hurting people that we claim to care about as a compassionate society.
Well, I think commerce should proceed. And if they're all starving the way they say they are, they would probably be willing to pay a premium for food. So we should be able to sell them food at, market prices.
Yeah. I just, like, to me, my only reservation about it is, oh, okay, well, they were doing okay. They're not a first world nation, but they seem to be doing okay up until the time we put sanctions on them. And then now they're beginning to have problems. And it just seems like every time we don't like a certain government, yes, we give some aid and we shouldn't do that. But on the same token, I don't think we should be imposing sanctions on other countries. Why are we meddling in every other country's?
Yeah, no, I don't think that we actually caused their economy to collapse. I think it really did collapse because they went into a communist state of
Well,
being.
yeah, I'm not saying that they were perfect. They did have some economic problems, but now, like, they're cutting off certain supplies that people rely on. And some of this is on their own. Some of this is their economic.
Actually, Venezuela used to be a source of beef. I don't know a lot about it, but I believe they used to have cattle ranches and things like that. And they sometimes even exported beef to other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't doing so badly. They weren't always doing badly at all. But after this communist socialist regime went into effect, there were actual food shortages, and people were going into the zoo and killing the animals so they could eat them. It was that bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I heard that happened. I didn't hear about the sanctions. I don't believe in sanctions.
Yeah, I don't even. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not even exactly about Venezuela. I know that they've had issues, but it just seems like in the last few months those have been worsened due to these sanctions. And I just think that, yeah, their economy is having problems because of their socialist policies. And it wasn't good under Hugo Chavez either. It wasn't perfect. People used to have to wait in line to buy toilet paper. That's just an example. You live in a imperfect society if people have to wait in line for hours to buy toilet paper because there's a shortage of toilet paper due to government regulations. They're not perfect, but it just seems like it was worsened. And my main complaint is I just don't think we need to punish a government just because we don't like them. On the same token, we don't need to reward them because we decide that we like that leader and then do an about face later and sanction them. It just, because it flip-flops. It's very fickle.
Yeah, no, our government shouldn't decide what happens with commerce. I'm against the Embargo Act, which was something Jefferson was for.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a problem, let our privateers fight for the rights of our right to ship goods back and forth, but we don't need to say that we're not going to allow our citizens to do business with a different state. That's
Yeah.
for the states to decide for themselves, but each citizen gets to do what he wants.
Yeah. And this is why you do get the black market economy, because people are still going to try and ship in medicine. They're still going to ship in things, but it's going to be just for people who can pay those high premiums because it's not legal. And the average person, you're meddling with the economy and as you're causing, but I guess Venezuela already had problems. So I'm not going to go too much into that. It just seems like I get kind of tired of hearing about government sanctions. We're going to show them, but does this ever work? It's just a vicious cycle. We do government sanctions, then it worsens the situation. Then somebody's going to cry, well, we need to do some humanitarian relief for those people that probably would have not been quite a dire of a state if we not had sanctioned their medicine and other food. I don't know. It just seems like a vicious cycle to me.
Yeah, it's just better for the government to stay out of business and not tell us what we can buy or what we can sell to others.
Yeah.
Or even what we can give away if we want to.
Yeah. So that was just my whole point about, oh, by the way, I was going to mention, I went to this donut shop the other day. Their donuts aren't very good, but they sell the Bitcoin. I thought that was interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I don't know if I'd buy donuts there again because I got a donut and, the donuts are a little iffy, but it is a place you can buy the Bitcoin if you're interested.
Oh, really? How do they sell it? I mean,
I didn't ask, but they sell donuts and Bitcoins, and I thought that was kind of random. And they're 24 hours.
oh, okay. What's it called?
It's called like Foster's Donuts, but I'm not a big fan of their donuts. Maybe their Bitcoin is better since it's not edible.
Well, maybe next time you can decide that instead of buying a donut, you'll buy some Bitcoin and see how that works.
I don't know. Like everybody talks about the Bitcoin, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just not interested in exploring it. But for people who are, that is a place you could buy it.
For me, it seems really iffy. I'll tell you why. It's really not based on anything. It's not like tied to gold or silver. It's based on this weird thing where you have a computer that's solving problems and you get credit for that.
Huh?
And that's really artificial. And
Yeah.
on top of which, the moment the internet collapses for any reason, and you're not going to be able to use that. And so, yeah, I would rather, if I'm going to stock up on something that isn't fiat currency, I would rather stock up on gold, silver, and even calories.
Yeah. Because oh, that was another thing I was going to mention, like not to go on a tangent, but like everybody's so worried like about sugar, like real sugar. And there's this lady, she's a baker on Instagram. Okay. She looks fit. She doesn't look like she has a weight problem. And even if somebody does, I don't think that their cake recipe is a place where you come to tell them to put less sugar in their cake. So anyway, I was just looking at Instagram because I like zucchini, and this beautiful zucchini cake popped up. And she just said, I baked 2 loaves and there's 2 cups of sugar, 1 for each loaf. And this is her family recipe. So this lady came to her Instagram page and said, oh, this looks really good, but could you put less sugar in it? And she goes, well, I'm not going to do that because it's a family recipe. And I actually commented and I said, yeah, like you don't have to eat both loaves. It's supposed to just be a dessert. It's not something you would eat every day. But this lady is a baker. She's not running an Instagram account for people that are going on a certain type of diet. It is a treat. Sure. And I just thought it's strange.
Well, I mean, once you see somebody's recipe, you are always free to alter it for your own use and do it differently. But she doesn't need to ask the originator of the recipe to change the recipe. You can just, tweak it if you don't like it that way.
Yeah, if you don't like it. But I've just noticed that lately, like a lot of people, okay, so somebody creates something like a recipe or like some sort of content, and then somebody who hasn't created it will come to it and say, well, it would be better if you did it this way. But then you look at their account and they're not creating any content like that, but they can easily suggest to others. I just always find that fascinating. Like, why don't you just go make your own recipe if you don't like the recipe?
Right. Yeah, I sometimes feel that way about people's comments on my novels. If they don't like it, they can write a different novel, right?
Yeah. Or they could maybe just read it and accept not everything that happens in the story might be what they agree with. Like, whatever happened to being able to read something and be like, okay, I might not agree with everything, but that is the author's opinion, or this is a different way of looking at the facts than what I was exposed to. Maybe not everything's supposed to be mirroring your worldview all the time, you know?
Right. Yeah. I remember I told someone, here's why I think such and such, and I was referencing my short story, um, the Punky Wonkies,
Yeah.
and I said, listen, if you read that, then you'll understand why I think this, and this. And the person responded with, oh, because you're such an expert. And that's not what I meant. I'm not an expert on that subject, but this is a story that shows my point of view on the subject. And so if you're interested, if you happen to be interested in my point of view, I think that reading that story would help you to understand it. That's all I meant. Not that I'm an expert on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I just see a lot of people, they're not creating content or writing a book or creating a video themselves. And it's very easy for them to critique something. But in my opinion is, if you really think that, it should be some motivation, because back in Hub Pages day, and now when I have time, I just work on my blogs. But back then I would just think, well, if I saw something different, I would write a hub about the way I see something, not like come to someone's and be like, well, this is the better way. I don't know. Like, I felt creative to create something, not to critique something and say it could be better this way. If I had an idea, I just would write about it. And it wasn't that my idea was better. It was just kind of like my take on something. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And there are all sorts of recipes and all sorts of deviations from original recipes. And each person can explain why they did it their way.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It was just something I've been noticing a lot on Instagram. And oh, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent again, but there is this lady I follow. She's on Instagram and YouTube. So she's on a trip to Italy with her daughter. Okay. Her daughter's maybe 2 or 3. And she's posted some pictures, like really lovely pictures of the grandma and the granddaughter, or maybe it's her great granddaughter, I think, because this lady's her grandmother. And she hasn't seen her grandmother in years. And the grandmother's getting to see the great granddaughter for the first time in like a year. And it was a really charming post of just picking tomatoes in an Italian garden, or making Italian pasta. And she's teaching the great granddaughter. But do you know what the people's main complaint about these posts were?
No.
Okay, so I guess it's hot in Italy, and the little girl wasn't wearing a top, but the mom covered it. Like, she didn't have any showing. Okay, but people came to her post and they were saying horrible things to this lady, saying that you should not have posted this picture because that's horrible. She should be wearing a top, but nothing was showing. They didn't say anything nice about the lovely great grandmother and the great granddaughter making pasta together or picking tomatoes in the garden. They just decided to attack this lady, saying, oh my gosh. And I thought that was so strange, but I'm going to try and not focus on those kind of comments anymore, because there's always somebody in the peanut gallery that's not happy about something. So
yeah. Yeah, in my opinion, Americans sexualize little children. In Europe, we don't, and in Israel, we don't really look at a child like that and think of them in any other way than they're a child, a baby.
Yeah, it's just a child. It's not. That's actually something that came up in the book, My Name is Matop. I loved Not One That My Daughter. It was very interesting. It was very well written. It was a very good story. But this has been, and I don't want to have any criticisms of Matop Mahmoudi, because she has her own take on things in her own life. But one thing that's interesting about her that's kind of similar to her dad is that her dad decided to be a very conservative Muslim, but she decided that she would become a very conservative Christian, and at a very young age. So actually, she had lupus, and I think this is really horrible. I feel so bad for her, but she went to Germany to get some treatments. But one of the things in the book that I just thought was interesting, I guess she's just throwing it out there as a cultural difference, was that she felt really good after a treatment, and they're walking around one day and they see some like toddlers in a preschool and they're playing in a sprinkler and they're not wearing tops. It's kind of this topic again. And Matab and the mom were just kind of horrified. But the German lady was like, this is German culture. It's just how people do things in Germany. It's a different culture. It's not to horrify you. They're just playing in the sprinklers. They're children. And
Right. Yeah.
it's just a cultural difference. And I just don't, I think it is an American perception that Americans think everything has to be very puritanical. But this is the kind of ironic outcome, is that Europeans aren't like putting that expectation on children. So it seems like you always will have some sort of scandal here in America, whereas it doesn't happen as much in less puritanical countries. I find that kind of
Exactly. Because if you look at a baby and all you see is a baby, you're not going to sexualize the child.
yeah. And why would you? It's just sad. This lady, I just felt bad for the lady because she's just sharing some nice posts, because people were upset at her, by the way, when she stopped doing YouTube videos. But it was because she got criticized. Like, they said that she needed to share more of her opinions and do more YouTube videos. So she scaled back on YouTube. And she said, well, I'm just going to do Instagram posts once in a while. But now, like, she just does the rare Instagram posts. And it's just interesting that we always look for something to criticize. But I guess this is human nature. Like, we always have to criticize something.
Yeah. Well, when in a story, there's always going to be a conflict. If there's no conflict, then people are less interested. That's just how it is.
Yeah. And I suppose that's how it is. But these are just some things I've been noticing about Instagram lately, is that in general, I like Instagram a little bit more than Facebook, because it just seems like less of an argument fest. But there's still some controversies. But okay, this is a weird thing about Instagram. When I post an Instagram story, I'm getting like these strange accounts like looking at my Instagram stories, and I don't know where they're coming from. But for some reason, these fitness and Bahrain accounts are looking at me. I don't know why. I don't live in Bahrain, and I don't really post like anything fitness related per se. Like, I might talk about walking or eating like certain foods, but I'm not like a fitness account. So I'm like, I don't know where they're coming from and why they're looking at my page.
I don't know. Bahrain is more liberal than most Middle Eastern countries, right?
Yeah, they're pretty liberal. The fitness account, I look at their like the pictures they post, like the women aren't wearing headscarves, but they're a little bit more covered than what you would see in an American gym. But it's just kind of funny that particular account, because I'm kind of looking at things about Instagram and analytics, like, because I'm kind of interested in, because I have converted both my accounts to an Instagram business account. So I just kind of notice these things, and I'm just curious, like, analytic wise, why these particular accounts click on my Instagram stories all the time and they're not following me. I'm like, that's interesting.
Is it related to your other YouTube channel?
One of them is, and the other one isn't. So the one that is not even, it doesn't even link to my YouTube, but I think I'm going to change that up, because for a few years I've had my main Instagram account linking to an art sale website where I hope to sell things, but nobody really clicks through and looks on that. So I think that I need to start posting my YouTube videos on this account that isn't really getting as much traffic. Like, I need to utilize it better. That's one of the things I want to start using Instagram in a way to utilize my YouTube traffic a bit more efficiently, since YouTube seems to be where there's potential to make money, and the blog not so much anymore.
Yeah, and don't you think that's interesting? That there was a time when blogging was a thing, and now it's almost not a thing.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. I feel like they kind of have discouraged it a bit. And it's funny because you'll type in a topic and there will be blog posts that come up, but it's not like just an individual blogger. It's more just like this corporate entity or media.
Right.
Aren't better. They're not better. Like, some of it's just fluffy stuff. Like, they said that they were going to fix this so like more relevant content would come up, but not really. It's not better content.
The Panda update really did change the face of the internet, but not for the better.
No, it didn't. But I know I've been reading what DuckDuckGo says too. It seems like they tailor whatever you're looking for on Google to be for whatever you search for recently. So maybe I need to use DuckDuckGo more for my searching, I guess.
I do use DuckDuckGo, but the thing is, since most people use Google, that's what drives the traffic. And they're
Mhm.
basically driving the traffic to these institutionalized sites who probably paid the money to do so. And it's an open secret.
And I know that that's why they had the pinned update, because a lot of the media corporations were upset because the bloggers were starting to make ground and people were really following them and very invested. And you used to be able, okay, a few years ago, start a blog and have a ton of traffic the way that somebody would on Instagram now. And I think that's why a lot of people have gravitated to Instagram or YouTube, because a lot of the people that don't have a link on Instagram, if you look at what they're posting, they have endorsements and they have maybe thousands to million followers, and they're like an influencer, but they're using that Instagram account like to sell a product that some company has endorsed them to do so. Whereas back in the day, you used to be able to have a blog and do that on your own, more or less, I felt like.
Yeah, yeah, you could. And the reason we still are managing to have an income from YouTube now is because YouTube is the only content farm allowed. And that's what it is. It's a content farm.
Yeah. But isn't it interesting that for some reason the written word has been devalued by the search engine, but the video, is it because they feel like, oh, it takes a little bit more like you finesse to find something that's written?
No,
I
no, it's
don't know.
because they have a monopoly on it. If hub pages were a place where you could look up videos, you that would not show up in search. It's because Google owns YouTube and they
Yeah.
have a monopoly on the whole thing.
Yeah, they do. I tried uploading some videos to Daily Motion and it just didn't really do that well because it's a French video company and they would get some views, but not that many.
Right. So YouTube is the only game in town. They can decide that they don't like your account and boot you out anytime they want to. There are rules, but there are also kind of rules that you don't really know what they
You
are.
don't know them.
Yeah. And even the big shots, like Jordan Peterson, who talk about how they're going to put together some alternative, I don't see them doing that. Do you?
No, because they want to do that, but I think they know at the end of the day how they're going to do that. You'd have to start from the ground up, and then it's a game of chance. Are people going to like your search engine more than Google? And by the way, back in the day, it used to be Yahoo. Yahoo used to be the one, like people used to be like Yahoo is better than Alta Vista. Although Alta Vista back in the
I
day,
like Delta Vista.
yeah, they were better, and they had like this just beautiful like search experience that I thought was just very calming, which might sound funny. But I also used to love Ask Jeeves, like back in the late 90s. You could ask it something and there'd be this butler that would pop up and he'd have all these comments and it was hilarious. And there were just so many little search engines that I thought were charming and they're gone now. Nobody uses any of those anymore.
Right. Well, Alta Vista gave up, and right now, if you look for Alta Vista, you'll find that they're using the Yahoo search engine. But at the time, if you looked for something that was rather unusual and almost nobody else was looking for it, you could find it on Alta Vista. Whereas today, if you're looking for something so unusual that only you know exists, you're not going to find it on Google at all.
No,
And
you're not.
so it's really not a search engine, it's a sales company.
It's unfortunate. And I don't think these changes made the internet better. They just made it. But I don't want to break up Google the way that some people want to do antitrust. I don't really want to do that, though. What do you think?
No, because that's the government. But the
Yeah.
thing, I think that they shouldn't be given any government support. I don't think they should be propped up, if you see what I'm
No.
saying.
And they shouldn't be spot. This is another issue people have with them. And it happens in the US too. People are like, oh, no, it doesn't happen in America. But if you look at all the cases where they have to hand information over to the government, they've done quite a few cases in the United States, just like other countries that we would criticize for being like that's a violation of freedom of the press. They've done that.
Right. So at this point, I think the world is becoming a smaller world. We're getting closer to almost a one world government, and none of us are going to be free under that.
Yeah, it's very it's interesting because they always said, "Oh, that's not going to happen," but it kind of seems that it's gone that way.
Yeah, because I went to Israel and I was hoping they had different laws about chimpanzees. Guess what? Same laws.
Really? Wow. I would have thought maybe, but they're kind of binded by the EU, I think. And the EU, by the way, has some very strange copyright laws where big YouTubers, I guess, are somehow being like their traffic's being somehow devalued in the EU because even if they just do like, okay, like, I don't know how it works, but some people, I guess, they play video games, but now some of those videos are not going to be shown on YouTube in the EU because it's considered a copyright violation because they might show a clip of the person playing a video game.
Yeah, well, Israel isn't, it's not in Europe, but
Oh no, it's not, but aren't they somehow like bound by I thought you
well,
would.
they're bound by some treaties, but not per se like that.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out why. I guess just independently, you have animal activists in Israel too, just like you do here. That probably is.
Well, there are some international treaties, and the Jane Goodall Institute is behind them. And so it becomes really impossible. You can go anywhere, in the supposed free world, and there are the same rules about everything.
I have some creepy stories about the Jane Goodall Institute. I got a call from them. I don't know.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
I got a call from them on my cell phone, and they asked me if I wanted to like donate to them, and I said I have no interest in your organization. I don't know how you found my phone number. I thought that was kind of strange because I have never been tied to the Jane Goodall Institute. I've never had an interest in the Jane Goodall Institute, but for some reason, all of a sudden I was getting text messages on my phone and then a call, and I said, I really don't know how you have found me, but I'm not interested in donating to your organization. I thought that was kind of strange.
Yeah, that is.
Especially since I mean, I've talked to you about, I know you're interested in chimpanzees, but I don't have an interest in chimpanzees. Why would they be contacting me? That's kind of
I
strange.
don't know. That is very odd because other than the fact that they put ads on my videos that kind of go counter to what I believe in, but that is their right. That's how ads work.
That's how
Yeah. I don't have any contact with them. So
yeah, that's just a strange thing. And another thing I was thinking kind of about the Jane Goodall Institute is we want to we have all these liberals, they want to break up Google, do antitrust laws, but why is it something like the Jane Goodall Institute is allowed to become such a big influencer in everything? Like, isn't that somehow?
It's involved in the United States government. It's involved with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which is an organization which is supposed to conserve our own native wildlife. And obviously, chimpanzees have nothing to do with that because chimpanzees are not native to the United States.
No, they're not. And isn't that also another form of, oh, it sounds like the U.S. government's kind of getting involved in the issues of another country? Like, why are
they're sending money to conserve chimpanzees in Africa, and they're making sure that people are not able to breed chimpanzees in the United States. And why?
That's strange. But meanwhile, they had to close some of the national parks last year, and they didn't have someone to clean the bathroom, but they had money to send overseas for this and that and the other. But they didn't have money, no matter how you feel about how large the government is. They literally had no park rangers cleaning the bathroom in Joshua Tree, and people were still going, by the way. It wasn't like you can keep them out. They just were, yeah, it was getting pretty gnarly, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, if we didn't have such a large population, then the normal thing would be to go wherever you go. That's where chimps do it. But it's there are just so many human beings in one area that you do have to have kind of the hygiene rules that we have.
Yeah, you do, definitely. You have to have hygiene rules. But I also think I don't ever want to own a chimpanzee, but I've never had a problem with people such as yourself who are educated and smart and responsible with owning a chimp. And I don't understand the big outcry against all ownership of any kind of exotic animal. It just seems like, because they try to equate it, by the way, with like drug traffickers or drug dealers who had a few exotic animals in their basement, and make an example out of everybody. And that is not everybody. That's a few people who had a strange fetish with having a lion, but didn't really want a lion, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only way we're going to conserve them, because we can't really control what happens in Africa, is if they are allowed to breed in the United States. But then there's the other side of it. You know, I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place, because while Bo can read and write, and, you know, a lot of people don't believe that, and that's fine. But there are these other people who say, well, why don't you let him decide what he's going to do with his life? Why don't you just set him free? And that's, you know, just because he can express himself does not mean that he can live in our society without, you know, without the supervision of somebody who cares about him.
Yeah, that just sounds kind of like a loony comment too. It's just because he would die. How would he have food to live? He can't. And then they'd probably like try and capture. You can't just set him free.
Yeah, I couldn't set him free, because there are these state highway patrol people just outside our town who are setting up speed traps all the time. And if they saw a chimpanzee walking around, they would just shoot him, because that's the kind of they are.
Yeah, that's just, I feel like that's just a random comment from somebody that's like, oh, but they don't want to learn more about chimpanzees and how you could actually conserve them. And someone such as yourself probably is doing a better job of conserving them than this big institute that is meddling in so many different areas. But my question is, are they a nonprofit organization? Is the Jane Institute a nonprofit organization?
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
But somebody makes money. Like, there are people that make money via that organization, I'm sure. So it's still lucrative for them. It's not completely like.
Sure. I mean, people make careers out of it, whole careers.
But they just, the way they present it to the public is, oh, we're just so humanitarian, we're so selfless. But these people, they make a profit. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, there's nothing wrong with making a profit, by the way.
Yeah, that's fine. No. Yeah. There's no problem with making a profit, but it's the way that it's presented, like, oh, we are just so altruistic. We don't really care about money. But yet at the end of the day, you definitely do care about money, because you're asking for donations, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and not only do they get donations from regular people, you know, they get donations from our government. And that's what I'm upset about most.
Yeah. So basically it's our taxpayer dollars, and we don't get a say in that. And they just get a cut of that, no matter how we feel about it.
Right. But, you know, life goes on, and I'm not even sure, now going back to our original topic before we close, I'm not even sure that whole Epstein thing isn't just a circus for us to look at that. And maybe there's something else going on right now that they don't want us to look at, you know? So a lot of times that's what the news cycle is like.
Yeah, it definitely is. But I also, and I know I kind of jump around a lot, I feel like, okay, I know there's always been salacious gossip in the news, but I do feel like at one time it was a little bit more coherent. It was about world events, politics. It wasn't just about all this salacious gossip rumor. I feel like they've heightened that in the 24/7 news cycle to try and compete with views and to compete with who's looking at my show, who's clicking on this. I feel like.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And oddly enough, it reminds me of my favorite British science fiction show, Blake Seven. So at Blake Seven was this freedom fighter. He was probably a bit on the left wing, because, you know, it's a British show and all that. But they didn't discuss the actual politics of the thing. But there was this horrible federation, and it was running, you know, Earth and the galaxy, or whatever part of it. And he was fighting against it, and he was captured and then he was mind wiped, and then he was accused of child molesting. And then when they told the public that he was a child molester, so everybody hated him,
Wow.
because that is a way to, smear somebody really fast. Um, so whenever the news is about something like that, I always wonder, did that really happen? Or are we just supposed to get all upset about it,
We're probably supposed to get really upset about it. I know that we've gone way over time. I guess what I'm just going to say at the end of the day is I do still follow some current events, but one of the reasons that I don't follow every story as closely as I used to is because I feel like they just want us to spend so much time on this and that. So we all are fighting with each other and arguing and not really like talking about solutions to problems in our country.
Yeah, I agree. So I hope that we haven't done that. We haven't
No, we
fallen.
haven't. I don't think we have. I'm just throwing that out there as like that's what I always feel like. I don't think there's anything wrong with being aware. You should be aware. Like I probably could be more aware nowadays, but I guess I'm just explaining why I choose to be kind of less aware, and it probably is good and bad because I just feel like
Yeah.
it's another story. What's going to happen next week?
Right. Yeah, no, I didn't actually read, confession. I didn't actually read any of the stories about it. I've read what people said about the stories about it. So,
Okay.
that was what everybody was saying, and I thought it was interesting.
It is interesting, and I have read some news stories. Like I read some of the things about Venezuela, but then again, at the end of the day, it's interesting, but it's probably best that I don't get caught up on that either because I feel like it's another part of the news cycle because there's always.
Right. Yeah.
Does anybody talk about Haiti anymore? Like remember there were the floods and everybody was so worried about Haiti, but it's not.
The last I heard, the UN brought some kind of disease to Haiti that hadn't been there for a long time,
Mhm.
and so then they had to deal with that on their own, and
Yeah.
that was after UN helpers brought a disease over there.
Wow. So we don't. I mean, it just seems like there's always a story, and then there was another one. I guess it was some sort of like, oh my gosh, we need to be. It was something in Africa. I wish I could remember. Like, we need to be so worried about this issue, like this dictator in some little African country. But then it turned
Was
out to be
some kind of genocide or something like that?
I'm not even sure what it was, like, because there's a lot of coup d'etats in Africa, just like in South America, like little, changing of power. I wish I could remember, but it was some sort of viral video, and everybody was so concerned one week. And then the next week, the person who had made the viral video, it came out that he was like involved in something not so savory. So then everybody's like, oh my gosh, maybe we shouldn't have supported that. It just, I guess.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I forget what it was called, but yeah.
Yeah, it just, I guess it's an example of how fickle the public is because one week we're worried about this and next week we're not worried about this and we're worried about that. And
It was about conscripting young boys, right, to fight in some
yeah,
guys.
it was something about that. Yeah, but we don't
Yeah.
even, it was just a blip on the radar, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's real, even though we have this sort of global economy and we have the internet, I feel that we know less about what's really happening now than we used to.
Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of the take because there's just so much information coming in and it's overstimulating us to some degree, I guess. But I still think the internet's great. If you want to just learn about a certain topic or share information, I do still see the value in it.
Oh, sure. I mean, I wouldn't be trying to have these live streams with you and hoping that we reach other people if I didn't see value in the internet. So I haven't gone and climbed under a
Oh, no.
rock yet.
No, I don't think that. No, I'm just saying, anyway, was there anything that we should share before you sign?
No, just that Kate Gladstone will be our guest on the main channel on August 16th. And watch out for some kind of special with Kelly Clear whenever it is announced.
I'm excited for that.
Okay, thank you, Julia. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye, Aya.
Bye.